Hello friends, welcome back to Product and Brand Management and a very important section of product life cycle which we have been discussing for past couple of sessions, wherein we talked about different important stages of product life cycle and tried to understand that how we should be thinking in terms of different aspects during different life cycle stages. Carrying forward from that particular discussion, I would be adding on, I should not be saying specific stages. You may think of these as additional insights based on researches, analysis, and to substantiate, if we can call them equivalent to stages, because not yet technically established as stages, if you would say, by literature or acceptance in contemporary marketing literature. So, I would refrain from calling these as specific stages, but we have to look at them as if it is happening. So, I would be focusing upon the tail end first, wherein, as you would notice, this blue line and this graph we have seen earlier as well. Now, imagine some products which have declined, and I would not go once again into that discussion of thinking about scenarios, that is in terms of product, a product as a brand and so on. But still one must remember that, and why I would be talking about that in my subsequent discussions in brand and as well as during later minutes when I would be talking about some of these examples here. So, when we look at this last end wherein decline is evident, sales has dipped, and I would not talk about that particular stage anymore. So, many organizations, they try to, I will just choose a red color to mark this. So, many organizations, they try to do something of this sort. Many a times this can be done from this stage as well. Many a times this can be this way also, or something of that sort, or this part is little flattened up and then it goes up from this side. Many cases it happens, and this you may term as rejuvenation, revival, and as I said, it is not an established term in contemporary marketing literature. This term was suggested by me and Professor Rajat Agarwal and Professor V.K. Nangia in one of our case studies which we published on an organization called Joss Polymers. So, that case study is available on European Case Clearing House. So, that is a repository. So, that is available there. Now, that is a primary research based case study wherein we studied this organization and several others, but we focused upon this organization as the main focal point of that case study, and we tried to understand that why do organizations do, if they want to revive that organization or product, sorry, and how do they do that. So, this revival stage or rejuvenation of a product and a brand is an effortful exercise, though it is wonderful, but the desire to revive a product is based on 2-3 elements which you should be taking note of as of now. First element might be in terms of the brand strength, the brand image, in totality brand equity which that product may have enjoyed. Then there can be a situation wherein that strength, that equity is supported by the fact that the customers, they still want that product even after discontinuation or exit. The market feedback tells you that we want this product. Although many a times you would realize that that has not completely been exited, many a times it is on the verge of exit, and many a times it has gone away, it is not there, even the retailers, the dealers are vanishing, shops are getting closed and so on. So, you see it can happen in any of the cases basically, and I will be talking about few of those, and I would not be specifically suggesting you with data that what exactly was the stage of these products in terms of were they completely exited or were they exiting, but that is not the point of discussion here. The point of discussion here is that these products can be revived, and how, why should we be doing this is the point of concentration. So, you see, for example, Enfield, a very established product in India, people enjoyed it, it had a very distinct, significant positioning, a very established target segment, and several aspirations around this product. And you see, one of the models of Enfield, Bullet, was very famous. Police personnel, army people, several others, even college students in some of the movies you would see in earlier days, and very enjoyable ride for the people who actually used this product. And then there was a whole lot of value chain associated with the product, service stations, and then local mechanics who were expert in dealing with this product. Lots of availability of parts and so on. So, product was doing well. Suddenly the scenario started changing, and we have talked about these kind of things wherein competition is one of those elements. You can just watch the last videos wherein different stages of growth and videos before that wherein elements have been discussed. So, an era started flowing in wherein people started focusing on different variants with slightly lesser power, but then lots of other features and advantages and so on. Multinationals, they started coming in with joint ventures in India, and somehow heavy motorcycles, or let us say whichever category you may look at it, as far as Enfield goes, to me it is a heavy motorcycle. So, those kind of models, they started receding back, and as it happens, when it gets triggered, then customer response becomes low, despite of the fact that it is a good product, alternatives become prominent, and intensity of the existing product starts getting low. If you will analyze, you would realize that that might have been a stage wherein organization could have strengthened their marketing communication. They could have gone for add-on features, or they could have gone for several other things, but somehow it did not happen. After few years, today if you look at this product, huge market acceptance, strong revival, very good growth, and it is all over the market once again with several variants, good models, and Then it has started establishing its inroads in different kinds of segments for specific targets. Academicians, they have started preferring this motorcycle. Several other people who did not prefer heavy motorcycles in due course of time, it has started focusing on different age groups as well. So, it is not specific to any specific age group now. So, you see, that is how it is reviving, and it has already rejuvenated, I should say, it has revived. So, this is precisely what I am talking about. A very important example now, you would look at Java, for example. This motorcycle again was having, was enjoying a very good market status, and it was under good growth. Somehow, due to competition, or let us say not pursuing the important innovative aspect which an organization should do at a particular kind of a stage, this motorcycle started plummeting down, the model started getting off, and then the story went along the same way. It also enjoyed a very specific target segment, and now you look at this is again reviving. You see, Java is reviving, it has picked up, I should say, as I can observe. I still have to fetch the data on that. You can do that through different kinds of sources, but Enfield has definitely picked up. And here we are talking of products which have faced decline. Then several shoes from Bata's kind of I should say collection. So, several shoes tipped down. Today Bata as an organization has also changed its aggressiveness in terms of growth. I would not specifically say with conformity, but some maturity was there. There was a sign of dipping down in terms of sales, that has to be cross checked through data which is available. If I am wrong at this point in terms of its slipping off from the maturity stage, but still there was a maturity stage. Now, after that Bata decided to pick up, and they focused upon the overall product mix along the line, along the width and so on, and we have talked about these terms earlier as well, and I would be mentioning about these terms when we would be talking of strategy associated with product management, strategies associated with product management for that matter. But you see, Bata actually changed its trajectory, and several products associated with Bata, they started reviving. Many shoes, many models, they were under decline. I remember few of those, so you can cross check those names. I would not specifically mention those here, because that is not advisable to say anything specific without the support of exact data here. So, talking about Joss Polymers, now this is a different kind of an example, and I have chosen to discuss this example at the last amongst all these 4 examples which I am talking about in terms of rejuvenation and revival, because this example cannot exactly fall into the product life cycle situation of introduction, growth, maturity and decline, and this may also not fall into the category of the next stage of saddle, which we would be discussing after this. So, you see, there are some examples wherein the initiation of a product is there and unobservable growth, I should say, leave aside maturity, and sudden decline comes into the picture. Joss Polymers is one of those cases wherein this organization initiated one of the initial most efforts for bringing in PET bottles and jars in Indian market, polyethylene triethylamide, that is today's plastic bottles which you see. Now, this product basically was not there at all, and some of the organizations they started working on that, and for the detailed story you can look at our case study. But again the point is that this organization came, and there were several kinds of reasons which were technological also, and were related to market forecasting also, but largely related to foreseeing the situation, because market was ripe. There was a huge potential in terms of growth. Organizations which managed their growth well, for example Pearl Pit, they did very well. They became a brand in themselves. But here this organization, they picked up, they had a promising market in front of them, they went ahead with good production, and many things went wrong for them, and suddenly they declined. And most of the part of their rest of the journey was spent on revival, which was the largest part of their PLC, should I say. They went for so many technological adaptations, they went for so many production related adaptations and augmentations, and they went for so much of marketing efforts, and despite of losses kept struggling, and then came out of losses and finally got out of the business. Still that organization might be working with some other products or brands or whatever is feasible for them right away, but till we studied, so they were on the verge of coming out, or at that time they came out, just came out of their losses, and they revived themselves. So for them this revival stage was, you see, if you will just allow me to sort of put up this mark here. So at introduction phase somehow they went this way and then suddenly declined, and just you can look at this introduction as decline itself, and then they started spending whole of their lifetime in an actually revival, more or less. So its story starts from here and it goes to the revival stage basically. So just to give you a fresh look, just on this introduction line I will mark the introduction, and then they went this way, and then they sharp decline, or and then they spend lots of time, or you can think of drawing this this way also kind of. So they took many years to actually revive their product basically. A very promising market, and by the time they revived the prices got shrunk, competition was too high, margins got low, and so on. So and many PET organizations, they put themselves near to their clientele so that they can become the integrated part of production system. So you see, that is where a rejuvenation stage is talked about. There are several examples you would observe wherein revival is focused upon. In today's era, when the capability, technological capability of organizations is getting higher day by day, organizations tend to focus upon, as I said, 2-3 elements. If customer wants that, if the leadership is committed to bring that product which was once successful back to the customer and request for or suggest for customers acceptance. So that can also be the reason. Or let us say market is in the initial phases, and you know that this product can do well because industry has to go a long way, the industry where the product belongs has to go a long way in terms of the growth period. So you can catch up with the industry in due course of time. So there can be several reasons, and so on. And again, when you talk of as far as categories in terms of sales, so for enhancing sales you have to win customer confidence. for enhancing customer confidence, because you are already under losses, you cannot go for aggressive advertising, it requires lots of cost, and retailers might be skeptical to put up their resources with you, because there has to be a promise of sales. So you must bank upon the intensity and the strength of the product and the commitment you had in earlier days of the product. These two things are the focal points, and then you have to rejuvenate from the point where you left the growth levels, actually the growth point. When I say growth point, because you see that was the point wherein you started earning your maturity, or stagnation should I say, that is not very appropriate, but when you were leaving growth. So you have to rejuvenate that era with same kind of commitment, with same kind of intensity and confidence of the customers, retail partners, service partners and so on. And to revive that, you have to focus in terms of mix of integrated marketing communication, which is not largely advertising. It has to be there, but that is a costly part and so on. So sales intensity has to be focused upon. Competitors again have to be looked upon with reference to bypassing them rather than to putting a head on with them. Actually, you have to revive the uniqueness. You see, product was already known, but you have to put up the uniqueness in terms of competition, in comparison to competition. And there are other elements. You see, price has to be, it can't be too low, because that will become the reason for, as far as your revival, when your revenue would be earning kind of profits for you. So that has to be cautiously decided, but again that should be acceptable in lieu with the trust you would be rejuvenating in terms of the product. Examples I have already discussed with you, and that is how rejuvenation has to be seen. Now, a very important call which one has to take in terms of rejuvenation and revival is that in today's competitive era, should we be focusing so intensely upon a product? And that is the magic of product life cycle understanding, actually. You see, if you feel that the same cycle of growth can be rejuvenated, then only we must focus. And I would not take you into the details of how marketing research or forecasting is done in terms of analyzing that same cycle would come back, but there is a whole lot of an evaluative methodology associated with bringing in that thing on board. I may refer to that later on whenever feasible. At this moment, we are focusing on life cycle stages. Now, you see, I would be focusing on another stage, which is sort of an intermediary section between growth and growth, should I say. So that is what you call saddle, and saddle effect in product life cycle has been discussed by many thinkers and authors. Here we are referring to the paper of Chandrasekharan and Telles, published in 2011. Now, this paper, a very important research, talks about that a saddle is a phenomena characterized by a sudden, sustained and deep drop in sales of new product after a period of rapid growth following takeoff, followed by a gradual recovery to the former peak. That is somewhere a dip between growth and growth. And such declines may have adverse consequences for managers of new products, who may have over-committed manufacturing capacity, built large inventories or expanded their sales staff during the period of growth. Now, you see, you know the potential of the market, you know the potential of the product, you know your brand strength, if it is an existing product or existing brand, and then you are working with that particular brand name, or the product is new and it has a promise and so on. So you plan for future, and that is obvious. But this paper talks about that one has to be cautious, because there would be a stage after a particular trajectory of growth wherein the sales would dip sharply, and that is where you have to analyze and plan that you should not overcommit in terms of resources. It is a very important thing, because once you have gone for that, and imagine that you are not such kind of an organization which can sustain all sorts of costs. So, there would be a debacle, and that is where we have seen in many cases that organizations offer themselves for sales, they offer their brands for sales, they put off their organizations completely many a times, because somehow there is a potential, the product is well accepted, you are doing good, but saddle situation comes in and you are unable to sustain that. Organizations which are strong in terms of as far as their product mix goes, they have a total revenue which is which is higher, and they can offset the cost of this stage in case of one product by the sales volume and the sales revenue from the other products. In totality, they can manage the costs, should I say, then they sustain that. Having said this, the paper further says that saddle have two boundary points, start and recovery. The start of saddle is the first year of decreasing product sales, and recovery is the first year in which sales cross the prior initial peak of growth. So, you see, why do you call peak of growth? Because at that particular moment, although the peak of growth in totality in real comes in when actually you have crossed the saddle stage and you further go towards growth, but here that peak of growth means the first stage of growth wherein it starts dipping and then it comes to the next kind of a stage. So, this is how saddle looks actually, and you see it's a clear curve dip which you witness here in terms of sales, and it has happened with many products, as the paper says. I will be elaborating about details of saddle, the aspects associated with saddle, with one or two interesting examples, and suggesting the fact that as authors have observed, it comes for large number of products, and it is important for us, the students of marketing, people like you who are future marketers, to understand this so as to conceive a scope for that, and that is where you would be able to save lots of cost in terms of, for example, integrated marketing communication, because you would not be communicating too much in terms of advertising, while saving that particular cost and utilizing that when the saddle starts and the growth starts dipping. You may also hold the high confidence levels of your retail partners at the time of the growth and give them some terms so that when the saddle begins, they stay with you. So, these are some of those very important things which a marketer can think of by conceiving the fact that saddle may come. So, I will be elaborating upon this, and then I will be going upon some very brief insight on that should PLC be followed as it has been always, or there can be other ways to think about that. I will go for a very brief mention of that. I have talked about that paper earlier as well, and after that I would be taking you towards a mutual beautiful type of a relationship between product, price, place, promotion, because that would be the beginning of our discussion on future category analysis, customer analysis, product strategy, and so on. So, stay with me till then. Goodbye.